button here is to welcome everybody. Mike and Tessia are coming in. And basically to ask our host, Chris Hammond, to take the virtual lectern for a moment and introduce our speaker. So Chris, if you wouldn't mind doing that.
For sure, Nigel. Good evening, everyone. And I'll extend my welcome as well. And I hope everyone's doing well and staying healthy in this season of pandemic. My name is Chris Hammond, and I teach at Albright College. And the photograph behind me is our science building, the big brick building by the pond, which is right by my shoulder there. And obviously spring weather, not the current fall. It's my pleasure to welcome you also to the Lehigh Valley section of the American Chemical Society for this October of 2020, the year we all kind of hope ends fairly quickly and in good health. Our speaker this evening is Professor Lorena Tribe, a familiar person to all of us in the Lehigh Valley section and certainly to many at the national level as well. So Lorena agreed to speak when we thought we'd be meeting in person. And since we're not meeting in person, I'd like everyone to take a moment to find their reactions button. So that looks kind of like this for the applause or this for the thumbs up, because we'll be using those during the talk tonight. Lorena, did I not tell you about that? I guess I didn't tell you about that. Okay. I love surprising the speaker with something kind right before it all starts. Lorena defended her doctoral thesis, which was titled Theoretical Study of Dielectric Properties of Ionic Crystals in the Structure of Fluorite in the Theoretical Chemistry group under the direction of Professor Alicia Batana at the University of Buenos Aires. She is currently a professor of chemistry in the Division of Science at the Pennsylvania State University Berks campus. Her research combines both the scholarship of discovery and the scholarship of teaching and learning. Lorena has shared with me that the opening portion of her talk will provide an overview of her career path. So without further ado, please use either the applause button or the thumbs up button, and join me in welcoming Professor Tribe this evening.
Thank you so much, Chris, for the kind introduction. And thank you all, everybody that's, joined this Zoom today. I really appreciate you being here.
My goodness. You're so chatty.
Hello?
Be sure you mute your microphones now, folks.
Thank you. I would guess that most of you are either, students or professionals, educators, many, and that this is probably not your first Zoom meeting of the day. So I do really appreciate you putting in the extra time to come and hang out and, join us at this time. I thought because, it's such a special time that we're living through, that I'd do a little bit of a retrospective to explain why it is that I'm talking about what I'm talking about today, and probably put it in context of everything else that's going on as we progress through the talk. So I do have a PowerPoint, and what I'm going to do then is, I know this because I've done it before. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, but the host has disabled me from sharing a screen. So I'm going to have to ask you, Chris or Nigel, I'm not sure who has the power to let me share a screen, if that can be done.
I do not have the power. That must be Nigel.
Okay.
Okay, now you should be able to.
Okay, let's
share.
see what happens. Yes, now I can share, and you should be seeing a title that says, "Where will all of the CO2 go?" And two things about this. One is that I was probably listening to folk music when Nigel reminded me that I did have to come up with a title for this talk. And that's where I got my thoughts from. And the other is that the title is over ambitious, right? I'm probably not going to tell you where all of it is going to go, but you know, we'll talk a little bit about how much I know and what I'm trying to figure out as we go along. So the reason that CO2 is important, of course, has to do with global warming. So, okay, this should advance. Yes, there we go. I became aware of global warming issues probably in the late 1980s, around 1990, simultaneously from two different sources. I was a grad student at the University of Buenos Aires at that time, and that's the picture on the top left of the screen. I used to work in this office. I don't know if you see my cursor, but the office on the second floor here, right in the corner. So I took an evening course. It was a mini course on fossil fuels and alternative energy. And that's where I learned about, you know, two dramatic concepts, that fossil fuels were going to run out and that they were also causing global warming, and that was a problem. So I had that, you know, as one of my sources of information. And the other was in this other building on the lower right-hand corner, that's the Villa Devoto School in Buenos Aires, a high school, where students took classes to get the International Baccalaureate degree. And that's just a high school diploma that's useful all over the world. So students could go there, but their high school diploma would be okay for them to go and take, you know, university classes in England or in France or, you know, wherever it is that they wanted to go. And it turns out that the textbook for the IB high school program in chemistry was based on problems. And the problems that we were looking at was smog, which, you know, in a lot of places we've been able to take care of now. The ozone hole, which then was a big topic, but now, you know, globally, we've been able to take care of that pretty much also, and global warming. Okay, so at this very formative, you know, beginning of my PhD studies, I was finding out about this issue from two very different places, two very different groups of people, people that were not connected by nationality or politics or anything that I could see, except that they were scientists and they were talking about the same thing, that global warming was going to be a problem if we didn't address it globally. So that's where I was coming from. Then I had the pleasure of doing a postdoc at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and I did some teaching there also, and then I started as an assistant professor at one of their two-year campuses, and that was Richland Center, population 1,200, I think, a very tiny little college in a very tiny little town in the center of Wisconsin. And there I was the chemistry department, so I had a lot of liberty in terms of teaching and curriculum, and I was able to start exploring, you know, putting all these concepts into my chemistry classes. For instance, you know, getting students to develop the cars that they wanted on the road in, you know, 2020 based on different alternative energies. And we spoke about biofuels and, you know, solar power, wind energy, all that kind of stuff. So I was able to go incorporating these thoughts into my teaching. And then for family reasons, I moved over to Pennsylvania and I came to Penn State Berks in 2002. I've been there since that time, so close to 20 years now, just a little bit shy of 20 years. And starting up in a new place, I was also able to start a new research program, and that allowed me to get more in touch with environmental topics. Even though the same as in my PhD, my work is in computational chemistry, I just took it from, you know, the systems I was looking at and started exploring systems that were more environmentally related. So that's how I kind of got where I am, and I will be showing you a couple of things that I incorporate in my classes because either as students, maybe you'll find them interesting, or some of you are teaching and might find them interesting for that reason. But along the way, you know, and this is like 30 years we're talking about from when I started seeing this and where we are right now. I feel that society made a lot of progress also. So if we go to last year, some of you might remember we were in the middle of the climate strike at about this time last year, maybe a year and a month. And these images are from the attendees of the climate strike in New York. And I challenged myself to put in some audio visuals here. So I'm going to attempt to show you something else that's not actually in this screen. So I'm going to say, stop share and share something different. Here we go. And this will just take a moment, because now I can go share screen again. And if everything works out, I can show you a recording from that day also. All right, and now I will stop sharing that. So this was such an energizing event with so many people, you know, mostly young people, not all of them, that seemed aware of global warming and concerned about global warming. And there was going to be this big UN meeting. But as you heard, they were chanting, "The seas are rising." That, of course, is one of the consequences of global warming. And I did want to share something that I show my students in class that has to do with that. And then I'll loop around and, you know, explain what that has to do with me. I'm going to get rid of this one. I'm going to open this other one and share it with you. Here we go. So hopefully now you're seeing a tool that I use in my classes. This is a sea level rise viewer developed by NOAA. And if you're not seeing a map of the world, somebody let me know. But this should be, you should see a map of the world, and if you click in on a particular place, and I preloaded it here with New York because that's where the march was. And those of you familiar with New York, I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. You can see Manhattan there, Lower Manhattan. And if you go all the way to the tip of Lower Manhattan, that's Battery Park. And that's where that group of people was headed to hear Greta Thunberg speak. And she was in this little bandshell area. And now, if we move this, scale on the left-hand side, it'll show us what areas would be covered by water if the ocean level went up. So I'm just going to be dramatic and say, let's go, say it goes all the way up 10 feet. And whoa, we would have all been swimming that day, right? So I use this in class to show my students what some of the effects of global warming are. And of course, it's not just the oceans, you know, the polar ice caps melting and the water heating up and occupying more volume, and therefore the coastlines being covered with water. But this is one of the consequences, and it's very, very visual, right? So this is a tool that I like to look at because it delivers the message, you know, very, it's impactful, I think. So sometimes what I'll do in class is ask the students, you know, where do you like to vacation on the coast? Do you have a home on the coast? Some people have like a summer home. Is there a place that you know about, you've seen it in pictures, you're attached to it some way? Let's see what it would look like, you know, if all this ice melted, or when all this ice melts, and will it still be there or not? So my favorite is down here, and I'll just take a quick peek at it. You know, I particularly like Cape May, And if you look at Cape May here, everything that isn't brown or green is underwater, right? So Cape May, Wildwood, North Wildwood, all this virtually underwater. So that's one of the things, you know, that that could happen with global warming. So then the questions become, and I'm going to stop the share and just go back to our PowerPoint so that we can see that. And I messed it up. Are you seeing the PowerPoint again?
Not yet.
No, we're
Not yet. I like the optimism where you say not yet rather than not at all. Okay. I think I've got it. I think I've got it. Share screen. Show me the PowerPoint. There we go. All right. So, and it'll let me move along. This is the map I was telling you about. So that was last year, you know, where I was kind of encouraged that people were buying into this idea, understanding this idea, knowing that something has to be done about it. Much more recently in time, this is from the day before yesterday. Some of you might know that the day before yesterday was the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction. And there was this publication put out by the United Nations. And it's called The Human Cost of Disasters, an overview of the last 20 years. I did not read it all since Tuesday. I did glance at it though, and some of the main conclusions. And the conclusion of this paper is that there has been a rise in climate-related disasters in these 20 years with respect to the prior 20 years. And some climate-related disasters include extreme weather events, major floods, droughts, wildfires, and extreme temperature events. So those are some of the other things that will affect us due to global warming. So, as we know, there's several things that do increase the temperature of the atmosphere. I'm not going to go through all of them, right? There's water vapor, there's methane, there's carbon dioxide, but carbon dioxide is potentially one that we could control if we made that decision. So what are we talking about when we're talking about carbon dioxide? Where is it all going? Where is it coming from? There's a very nice paper. This one's just from last year, and I leave you the reference here if you're interested. So this is in Nature from 2019, where it actually spells out all the sources of carbon dioxide and the sumps, if you will, of carbon dioxide. And you can kind of add these up. There's, you know, carbon dioxide due to energy, to buildings, to industry, to transport, agriculture, land change, and all that's all going into the atmosphere. And then you have what the land and ocean can receive. That would be the sink. And you can see that the difference is about 17 gigatons, right? And this is over a period of time. So there are people studying the macro, you know, features of this problem. I'm not going to do that. I just leave this here as a reference for you to look at. I'm going to go more into the details of one of the ways that we could dispose of carbon dioxide, or at least put it somewhere, you know, rather than just letting it out into the atmosphere. So in this other cartoon that we have here, and this one is from the, this one I got from Indiana University's website. You can see that coal and biomass and fuels are used for different things. So there's electricity generation, ethanol plants, cement, steel, refineries, etc. So if in those situations one would capture the carbon dioxide instead of letting it go into the atmosphere, then if you follow the cartoon down here, you can see that they're putting that carbon dioxide into the ground, right? And there are a series of different different layers or different characteristic parts of the ground, the subsurface, where one can put in carbon dioxide, and one can actually make it do different things also. So for instance, you could put it in down into buried saline formations and just leave it there. Or you can put it into coal beds that are completely dead, that you're not mining anymore, and just leave it there. But one could also use it to displace methane from coal beds. And that's one of the ways that one gets methane still back out as a fuel. That's kind of the same thing that you do if you try fracking with carbon dioxide instead of with water. Then it's called enhanced gas recovery, and you're sending this methane, this carbon dioxide down, and you're loosening up the methane and you're capturing it. Okay, so it's like a cleaner way of fracking, if you would. Not that I'm endorsing it. You can do that with depleted oil reservoirs, right? And then get a little bit of that trapped oil back. Or you can just sink it into the oil reservoirs and leave it there, not get anything out, depending on the engineering and how you approach this. So those are some of the things that one can do for carbon sequestration from a geological point of view. And I'm going to mind my P's and Q's because I do think we have the president of the Geological Society of Washington listening into this talk. So I'm sure Dr. Stein will correct me if I make any mistakes. So this is the kind of system that I'm looking at when you put carbon dioxide into the soil, into the ground, into the rock formations. And what I use are atomistic first principle calculations, in particular density functional theory. And that's just one of the approaches of computational chemistry to calculate how molecules interact with each other. So I use this to look at the interactions that the carbon dioxide would actually have with those with the different components of the subsurface. And one can use this to model the adsorption, that's when it sticks to something, the desorption, when it gets pulled off, and also one can take that to the extreme of calculating the kinetics, so how long are these processes going to take. So with my students, we've been looking at this for a number of years now, and we've focused mostly on two kinds of clays. One is called montmorillonite, and the other is kaolinite. I'll come back and tell you more about them. And today I'm mostly interested in carbon dioxide, though I'll talk a little bit about how water affects this process also. But we've also looked at methane, you know, and how that compares to water. So here you have a cartoon of one of the clays, and so we're trying to develop these ab initio models, and we need to calculate the vibrational frequencies. All you who have done organic chemistry already know that that is, you know, how the molecules move, or if you have a molecule attached to a surface, you know, how that would move back and forth. Once you've got the vibrational frequencies, this software will enable you to calculate free energies, G. So then you can calculate delta G's for the adsorption. You can use this to calculate the equilibrium constants. And you can also do more laborious work and actually get adsorption, EA, the activation energies for the adsorption and desorption. And that'll lead eventually to the kinetics. So what I'm trying to use this for is to see, once you've put the carbon dioxide into these places, what is going to happen as a function of time. And these are just some details for those of you that might like computational chemistry. It's just a list of the name of the software package that we use, the methods that we're using, and the software that we use to visualize the results. So this is what it actually looks like when we do a calculation. This is a very small piece of kaolinite clay. So these gray things are aluminums. They're surrounded by octahedra of water. These light brown things are silicons, also surrounded by the waters. So you have layers of aluminates with layers of silicates stuck on top of them. And then it's like a stack of cards, right? You have these layers on top of each other. I only model teeny tiny portions because the software, it's very time intensive, right? So we use these little models. And what I'm showing you here, for instance, is what a calculation would look like if you take this model and you attach or you incorporate different numbers of water molecules. So when you talk about a formation that is, it has more humidity, that would be more water molecules. So we go all the way from the one in the upper left-hand corner that's completely dry, down to the one in the lower right-hand corner. And as you see, this one has like a formation of waters going off the top of it. Like it really doesn't want to get wet. And, you know, if you're talking about kaolinite, it's kind of like talcum powder and, you know, you use it to not be wet. So that's the way it should look. This is our other clay. This is a montmorillonite cluster, which looks very similar, but every now and then where you should have had an aluminum, right? This would have been the layer of aluminums down here. Every now and then it gets replaced with a magnesium. The charge of the magnesium is different. You get a charge on the surface because of that. And then between one layer and another, you suddenly get these little cations to balance out the charges, right? So behavior of montmorillonite would, and think montmorillonite is what's in kitty litter, right? It's very absorbent. So when you look at the progression of adding water molecules to a montmorillonite particle, like this one, here again, you have a completely dry one in the upper left-hand corner. And if you go all the way down to the lower right-hand corner, you have these 4 water molecules. And as you can see, the water molecules are sticking closer to the surface. They're getting distributed around the surface or around that interlayer cation. And you're not getting those structures where the water seems to want to get away from the surface. So we did some calculations for that. We got the delta G's of adsorption, and we got that for both the kaolinite and the montmorillonite to kind of establish a baseline. And then the question was, what are we going to do? What's going to happen when we put in some carbon dioxide? So here again, you have 2 montmorillonite particles, and in one of them, the carbon dioxide is all the way out here. So we're saying, okay, you know, what's going to happen to this? And the final product is on the right-hand side, and you can see this bent structure over here. It's like the carbon dioxide has got in so close that it's actually formed a bond to the surface of the montmorillonite and become part of the mineral. So if I ever say mineralized, that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. So we did this with the kaolinite, and here we're adding a carbon dioxide for all these different cases in which there are more water molecules. And I just want to draw your attention to the fact that most of these look like carbonates, right? Or if you want to call it carbonic acid, because there's some hydrogens there. So it's really interacting with the water, as you'd expect, because the water was kind of floating around on the surface. It didn't want to get in there, except for this one that's going to be an anomaly, because for some reason this simulation didn't get that far. So that carbon dioxide is just kind of floating. And then we did exactly the same thing with the montmorillonite. And once again, you can see the different configurations here. In most cases, and my mouse is misbehaving. But in most cases, you can see that you're ending up with a carbonate that's either floating in solution or stuck to the surface, except for one anomaly that's hanging out up here in the top right-hand corner where it didn't get that far either. So once again, we have a series of delta G's of formation of these complexes. And the best way to see them is actually in a chart, I think. So you can see that as the number of water molecules increases, the blue ones correspond to the kaolinite. It seems to become more favorable for the kaolinite to stick to the particle when there's more water, which, you know, makes sense because it's forming that solution and making it easier to stick. Whereas with the orange ones down here, this is on the montmorillonite. The montmorillonite actually gets carbon dioxide bonding very strongly to it, and it becomes less intense when you add in the water molecules. I would, you know, imagine that if we keep on going and just get more of a solution kind of situation, let's say 5, 6, 7 water molecules, then they're both going to get to the same stage, because really what you're forming is this carbonate in solution. So that's as far as we got in terms of delta G's, you know, what's favorable, what's not. And then we've done a little bit of work, but this one I'm just going to show it in passing in trying to calculate the delta E's of, the E's of adsorption. So we can actually track these structures by forcing the carbon dioxide to come in closer and go further away from the surface. And we move it a little bit, we stabilize the whole thing, we get a value for the energy, then we move it a little bit more, stabilize everything again, get the energy again. These are called scan curves. They look very pretty for this dry montmorillonite. You could envision taking a value here at the top of the curve and a value at the bottom and saying, okay, to desorb the molecule, you know, we're going to have an activation energy of this much. Of course, when you add in water molecules, it gets a lot more complicated. You can't actually, or at least I have not been able to get a carbon dioxide into the surface and then pull it away from the surface and have it still be carbon dioxide, okay? If this was electrochemistry, you'd call it hysteresis or something like that. What goes in is not what comes out. What comes out is some form of carbonate in solution. So it gets a lot more complicated. We kind of came up with an overall, let's see if I can get that out of the way. There we go. We came up with examples for montmorillonite and for kaolinite in dry situations and in wet situations, and sort of estimated what these activation energies would be like to go from the completely free situation, which is where you have the surface, then the water molecules, and far away out there, the carbon dioxide, passing through a physisorb state, which are the couple of cases that I was showing you where the carbon dioxide molecule still looks like a carbon dioxide molecule. It's kind of somewhat close to the surface, but you know, it's found like some minimum in some local potential energy, and then what it would take to get it over that little barrier and into that mineralized form where it's actually forming part of the mineral. So we have, you know, some tentative idea here of what is going on. Needs more work. So I'm going to keep this short. I was going to speak for half an hour, and I think I'm there already. So I'm going to wrap it up so that you have time to ask questions or make comments. Basically what we did was develop these ab initio cluster models for the interaction of carbon dioxide with two clays. We calculated their vibrational frequencies to be able to get those delta Gs. we found that as a function of water, carbon dioxide becomes less strongly attracted to montmorillonite as the humidity increases, whereas it becomes more attracted to kaolinite as the hydration increases. And I see that as a consequence of, carbon dioxide dissolving into solution to become carbonate. It looks like carbon dioxide can end up in stages where it's just physisorbed and, just hang out there over time and be okay. But it can also progress to become mineralized if it gets over those little energy barriers. So, when you say it's mineralized, what you're saying is that you have changed the structure of the mineral. So what was kaolinite before, if it now has a carbon dioxide incorporated into it, it's not really montmorillonite anymore. And the same with a kaolinite, right? So this is what I was trying to get at when I was saying, okay, you take the carbon dioxide, you dump it into these places to get it out of the atmosphere. And I'm curious about the long-term effects, right? So what if we are changing the mineral structure? What if we're putting in enough carbon dioxide to cause a fissure, a rupture? Is it going to break apart something? Is it going to let something else in and out of those structures? Is this one of the causes that leads to things like those micro earthquakes, all those little tremors? Does it have something to do with the fact, that the composition of these minerals is changing, or will it do so over time, even if that's not happening now? And we're working on, the whole activation energy to see what those time frames may be. What is the point of this? Well, it's to show models of what can be going on in these complexes. The goal, of course, is somehow to reduce carbon pollution in a reasonable way, see what happens to the carbon dioxide, and see if we can predict any transformation of mineral structures or write that off as something that's not happening. So with that, I'd like to show you the people that actually did the work. This is Michael Kilmer in the top right. He was an undergraduate at Penn State Berks, then he got his master's degree at Temple University, and he's currently employed by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, which is what he always wanted to do, so that's great. And on the right bottom of the screen, that's Ryan Bennick. He worked with me for a couple of years as an undergraduate at Penn State Berks. Now he's a graduate. I believe he's currently working at Eurofins and weighing his options. So with that, I am going to thank you all very much again for coming in and listening. And I'd be happy if you have any comments or any questions, things you'd like to discuss. And this is my contact information, which I leave on the screen right here. Thank you very much.
Okay, please join me in a round of virtual applause. I love those buttons.
Thank you.
There we go. And we'll take questions from the floor. Please just announce yourself and your affiliation and address your question to Lorena.
Nigel Sanders, Secretary of LVACS. Lorena, I may have missed it, but in modeling the two clays, did you include the sort of substitution that normally occurs in these clays, such as montmorillonite, that produces the charging in the layers?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for that question. Yes, we did. So in one of those models, I know they go by very fast. In one of those models, we actually replaced an aluminum, which is a 3+, with a magnesium, which is a 2+, and that's what leads to the montmorillonite structure. And when we do that, we've put in a sodium cation in the interlayer. There are different kinds of montmorillonite. One could expand this to try with calciums. You know, we'd have to have a bigger model or put in half a calcium. I don't know. But yes, that is definitely something that we did. And I believe that's what led to these rather different results.
Right. And then with the kaolinite, with the 1-to-1 layer structure, of course, you have the alumina sheet that's exposed, and that I presume would probably have a more alkaline reaction anyway.
Well, that is interesting. We haven't. That's an excellent point. We studied all those reactions on the silicate surface. And we have not yet completed reactions on the aluminum part. So we haven't actually studied the aluminate surface. And yes, it'll be great, you know, when we get to do that, to compare what both of them look like.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions for Lorena?
I do have one. This is Mike Bertucci from Moravian College. Got a whole bunch of Moravian students on here. I'm really hoping that they ask a question as well. One of the ones that I was interested in, if you're able to go back to, I think it was one of your last slides where you talked about the energies for dry versus, I think you did calculations with 4 water molecules.
There's got to be a better way to do this. Sorry. Is this
the one that you just passed? The one that you just passed, actually.
This one.
So this one, I'm really curious why, you know, you first of all knew to choose 4 water molecules, because my computational chemistry experience is very limited. But I did a couple of transition state calculations, and to find out what was the appropriate number to use was difficult in you know, models where you're having explicit waters. So that was a question. And then I was just wondering if you could talk about the difference here between montmorillonite and kaolinite, because they're quite different once you start to incorporate water.
Yes, I thank you. Those are interesting questions. I'd start by qualifying, you know, any results that I have, to say that they're results for that particular situation, right? So I would really like to have the computational and, you know, student power to do repeated scenarios, because when you move, you talked about explicit water molecules, and that is when you take an actual H2O molecule and put it somewhere in your calculation. When you move those around, you can come up with different outcomes. So what I have here is a snapshot, right? Now, this is not the end of the story. This is just the beginning of the story. But how did I know to use 4? I did not know to use 4. I started at 0 and started adding them in one by one, and 4 is as far as we got. But the way I rationalize this is by looking at the size of that little cluster and believing that on a cluster of that dimension, of those dimensions, 4 water molecules constitutes about 1 monolayer. Okay, so I was trying to represent the difference and the progression between a completely dry surface and a surface that's covered with 1 monolayer of water. And then, you know, all the other ones are intermediate steps. So that in terms of what our end game was, those 4 water molecules. If I were to double, you know, the surface that I'm working with, then I'd probably need at least 8 water molecules to say I got as far as a monolayer. Okay. So that's one thing. The other thing is to come back and reflect on this chart that I have up right now. And I really don't like to do this very much, because first of all, the upper right-hand corner, I'll go with the worst case scenario first, right? This is the situation where we had those water molecules and, you know, we brought in the carbon dioxide until it was installed on the surface, and then we tried to make it leave. We tried to pull it away, and it doesn't leave as a carbon dioxide. It leaves as a swarm of bees, right? Where the center is the carbon dioxide that now has become a carbonate, and all the water molecules are the rest of the bees going along behind it. So I don't have good information on the upper right-hand corner. And the other ones, the only thing that I get from them right now is that this 185 for the carbon dioxide going down into its mineralized state means that once a carbon dioxide has become incorporated into the montmorillonite, it really does not want to go out again. And as you can see, the numbers for kaolinite are lower, right? So it can appear that this carbon dioxide has become mineralized in both these cases when there's no water and when there's a monolayer of water, but you could pull it out again with less energy than you would need to get the carbon dioxide out of the montmorillonite. That's as far as I can get in interpreting these.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, like Michael, are there students out there with questions for Professor Tribe?
I have a question.
Okay.
So my name is Matthew Eibel. I'm a student from Moravian College. So my question would be, you talked about how montmorillonite would bond to carbon dioxide like less strongly as hydration increases. And then there's basically the opposite case for kaolinite. So my question would be, do you think we can utilize that fact to maybe use montmorillonite in dry environments essentially, or less humid environments, and then kaolinite in more humid environments?
That makes a lot of sense. That's an excellent extrapolation. I tend to just, try to come up with the computational results and then put them out there for people, to maybe do something with them. But yes, that's the way I would think about it in that way. If what we're trying to do is just make the carbon dioxide stick, then pumping it into somewhere with dry montmorillonite seems to make it stick more. If we're not so concerned about that, then I would say that it looks like a montmorillonite or a kaolinite formation that are very wet are going to be equally useful. But what we're really forming is a solution of carbonate, acid carbonate, carbonic acid. So yes, excellent observation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are there further questions for our speaker tonight?
I also have one question. I'm Cole Carey from Moravian College as well.
Wonderful.
So I know you were talking about, I guess at the very end of it, you were saying that you don't know the exact side effects that could be caused by this, like tremors and things like that. Have there been any, I guess, studies or anything looking into because I guess right now we're looking at global warming, obviously, and has it had an effect on it, as we know, or has there been anything looking at that?
That's a huge question. I'm not sure that I can answer very much of it. Prior to studying, prior to describing this in terms of sequestration, I was looking at it more in terms of enhanced gas recovery, because I spent some time studying fracking and enhanced gas recovery. So what I have heard at meetings where people discuss these processes is that there's absolutely a correlation between, putting in the carbon dioxide or putting in the water, using that to free up the methane and get the methane, get the natural gas out, and the increased seismic activity. Okay, so that is known. It was mind-blowing to me that people in the industry were saying, oh yes, that's what we do, it's fine. It's when out, among my friends and acquaintances, the question still is, oh, is it correlated? Does it have anything to do with fracking, with enhanced gas recovery? Yes, it does, and it's not a secret. Now, are there other things related to global warming that are leading to more earthquakes or tremors? I think they are. I'm sure I've read about that somewhere, but I don't have a citation to give you. I don't have numbers. So it's something I could follow up if you want to put your email in the chat. If I find something, I could send it to you. I believe there are other mechanisms for which seismic activity is increasing. I just don't know them.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wonderful discussion. Other questions to round out this portion of this evening's activities? Okay, if not, find that reaction button. Bring out that virtual round of applause for our speaker tonight.
Thank you all so very much. I appreciate it.
And Nigel, am I passing the baton back to you?
Yeah, Chris, you can. So again, thank you very much, Lorena and Chris, for hosting this. Even though we're not able to get together face to face tonight, I think this was a very great discussion. Actually, I'm going to call on our chair, George Ruger, to lead off this brief business meeting section. George?
It's a new social construct called Zoom shame.
I don't know if George is on the call anymore.
He is.
At the bottom.
Are you muted, George? Seems like you're muted.
Well, it was certainly good to see so many students tonight. Michael, you get props for that.
Oh, it was all them. They're just interested. Right, guys? Good job. And if you guys, for the students that are on the call, if you want to stay for business, that's great. I think if you have some homework to do or some studying to do, that's okay. You can head out. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know what happened to George. I know he has a difficult connection sometimes, usually calling in from New York, across the border there.
Well, hi, it's Jean. He did message me in the chat, so he was here. Maybe try hitting him in the chat. I tried messaging him and telling him, you're up, unmute.
Does that mean the baton gets passed to Roger?
Maybe.
I can mention next month's meeting if you would like, and maybe George will come back on to do the other stuff then.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, well, next month's meeting will be on November 19th, which is a Thursday evening. It will be hosted by Lehigh University, and there's going to be several short PowerPoint talks given by faculty representing several of the schools in the Lehigh Valley to talk about the history of their chemistry programs, maybe the history or maybe basically whatever each school wants to talk about their program. We're hoping to get a few more than we have so far. Ned Heindel is leading the charge on this meeting and getting this together. So far, the schools that have agreed to participate are Penn State Berks and Penn State Lehigh Valley, Lehigh University, Lafayette College, Moravian, and Albright. So that's 6 4 to 5 minute small talks and possibly more. So I hope to see
I
everybody.
had said yes to Cedar Crest, but I didn't know if that.
Okay. Ned sent me a list of what he had, and he didn't put Cedar Crest in unless that was very recent.
No, I did it way back when he first asked, but that's okay.
He must have forgotten about
I
it.
gotta panic to get it done still, but
Yeah, he certainly wants to hear from Cedar Crest. I know that. I'll drop him a note and remind him that you already agreed.
Well, I know what George really wanted to talk about tonight was the elections. So it's that time. And we need to really get a slate of candidates together by the end of this month at the latest, because that gives us the 3 weeks that we need to run the election and still have results to report to ACS by December 1st. So we've got a couple weeks here, but not much more than that to get together our slate of candidates, the positions being chair-elect, secretary, treasurer, and counselor this year. So
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can
yes.
hear you.
I got through the presentation, and as soon as it was winding down, that's when my Wi-Fi decided to act stupid. So it is what it is. But yes, elections are very important. We are going to have a very interesting counselor race this year because we have a new hat in the ring. Michael Bertucci threw his hat in the ring. So welcome to the counselor race.
Okay.
Now, for those of you who don't know, ACS guidelines do require us to have at least 2 people for the counselor position. So typically what we do in our section is whoever gets the most votes is the counselor. Whoever gets the second most votes is the alternate counselor. And so that's one area where we should have multiple candidates for that position of people who really want to run. Now, ideally, we would have at least 2 candidates for all of the other positions as well. But realistically, sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't. But the goal of the committee to get these slate of candidates is to have, ideally at least 2 candidates that are willing to run for each position. So I guess we could, since we do have a number of people on the line who may be interested, do we have any candidates for any positions that want to run, including rerunning?
May I remind everyone that according to our bylaws, student members may run for chair-elect and secretary. So the students were dismissed, Mike.
Good job.
That doesn't relieve you of the obligation of reminding them of this simple fact. We have had Moravian students act as secretaries in the past very successfully, by the way.
Okay. I appreciate that reminder, actually. And a lot of the students who were on the call were seniors, and many of them are thinking about, applying for jobs in the area. So I think it could be really interesting to put that out, to be involved in the community a bit more. So
we haven't had a student for a while, so it's really time.
Okay. Thank you.
So George, are there any other potential candidates you've heard of so far besides Mike?
Well, he's the only one who responded directly. I wonder if anybody wants to nominate anybody on the screen right now to run, or rerun, I should say, perhaps. Okay, I'll call somebody out. Nigel, would you like to rerun as secretary?
Oh yeah, that's not a problem.
I thought that was a given.
I kind of feel since I've gotten the section into so many new things this year, mostly per force, new email campaign system, which we had to do, and new website, which we had to do because ACS changed their benefits for us. So we had to go out on our own. So in the beginning part of doing that, couple months that we've been on MailChimp for the email and also for the website, they provide both. So it's been interesting learning, but yeah, I'm certainly willing to hang in there for at least another year to get everybody up to speed with these things.
That's
And I'm willing to nominate Tessia to run again for treasurer if Tessia is willing. I see Tessia is on the call. Maybe she can. There.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, there we go.
okay. So I do believe it's Kelly's counselor seat that is up, correct, Jean?
Yes.
That is correct, yeah.
Does
Okay.
anybody know if Kelly would like to run again?
I really don't know. I think she might, yes.
Lorena, would you like to rerun, or would you like to run for that position as well?
Well, here's the thing. If Kelly would like to run again, and if Mike is willing to run for the position, I'm very happy to step aside. I'm already on WCC. I'll be with them for another full year, maybe 2, I don't remember. So it's not like I need extra service.
You're still willing to be our other alternate.
I beg your
So you were Kelly's alternate?
I'm Kelly's alternate, yeah. And, you know, I think Kelly is doing a great job. I've seen her represent us on WCC and she's doing it well. So if she's willing to run again, I think we should support her by you know, making it possible for her to run. And then, you know, if Mike is already willing to go also, I think with 2 candidates, we're just fine. Of course, if, you know, if anybody else wants to run also, we can have 3, 4, 5 candidates, but we don't need them. So long as we have 2, I'm willing to step back.
Well, Lorena, the chair-elect position is open. You want to? That seems to be often the hardest one to fill for some reason.
I think we need new people for the chair-elect. I think that's not to disparage George, but I think it's an entry position, right?
I did tell Caroline she could have 1 more year off because she does have a newborn at home, so maybe elect. But I did tell her she could have this year off unless she really wanted it. She's not commenting. I guess that's a no.
Sorry, the baby's fussing in the back, so yeah, I think I need another year.
Fair enough.
Thank you, though.
Okay.
Lorena, since you do environmental chemistry, you must believe in recycling and
Is recycling now like global warming a belief?
you could be a recycled chair just like me.
Oh.
Good one.
Okay, so we can poll the membership. We do have one nominee for secretary, for treasurer, and 1, potentially 2 for counselor. Again, chair-elect is typically the hardest one to fill. We may have to twist some arms if we get around October 28th, 29th, but we have time for that, and I don't want to take too much time on our call. It's already 8 o'clock, but we do have some other things to do. One thing that I got an email today was for volunteer of the year, but I have no idea who else received that. Did anybody else get an email from David Horwitz from about, okay, I'm seeing those.
Maybe I did.
I got that email.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it is a slightly different format this year. It's primarily focused on who did most in the section as far as virtual formats. And you can get the email if you don't have a copy already. I do believe they waived the 5-year requirement. So theoretically, Nigel could win again.
Or Greg Lynn would be a good candidate.
Yeah.
The idea is because they're changing the format to make it focusing on those who contributed virtually to ACS. They did waive that 5-year requirement. So there are a few people. Greg Lynn could be a good choice. She has done a number of events, virtual events in the section this year and in years past. So that's a good candidate. I have until December 15th to select somebody, which I really don't want to wait that long until I'd rather wrap it up by November, but we can get that done relatively soon. It's not a complicated thing to select somebody and then make a short biography for them. So we will get that done in the near future. Let's see, what else do I have on my hit list?
Was the diversity one also announced then?
The diversity is announced. It is due November 8th. If you would like me to forward it's on the website. I can forward it. And they don't have very many. They also don't have very many MET grants. So
We
if
already have a
anybody,
MET grant, so we're not eligible to
organizing.
apply again.
I was talking about something different, actually.
oh,
I'm
sorry.
talking about the diversity advancement member of the year, whatever it's called.
Okay.
Advancing diversity. It used to be anyway. And it was, George, you awarded it to Celia, right?
That probably would have been last year's.
Last year, yeah.
Yeah, so it
But
wouldn't have
that
been
should
me,
be coming up too.
You mean I awarded it back in February, you mean? Is that what you're
Right,
referring to?
yeah. I
All
mean,
right,
that's when the volunteer was
Celia.
awarded too.
That was Celia who was awarded that. That was, so we would be looking for a different candidate. I suppose we wouldn't do the same
Yeah,
person
well,
twice. And
that's what I was asking. Did they change the requirements for that one as well, or not?
I don't know. I just saw the email today from that particular award. I don't know what the requirements are for the other ones. That just popped in my inbox this morning, but we can look into it.
What you were talking about, Gene, was the new Diversity, Inclusion, and Respect grant.
Yes.
And Greglin, Jeremy Hyman, and I are getting a proposal together.
Okay.
We're quite well along. I was going to talk about that for a few seconds anyway to this group. Any ideas that you have, we'd like to put that out to you actually in draft form right away. George, are you breaking up? Is that you breaking up there?
I think it's reverb.
Yeah.
Or he's
So,
sipping a soda.
It does sound like soda.
So anyway, we will be getting out our proposal in draft form to the EC here very shortly. And we are planning to put in for that grant up to $2,000. And this will be for a virtual after-school partnership. And Jeremy and Greglin both have a lot of school contacts already who are interested in doing this.
Good.
So over a period of weeks or so, you know, maybe a day a week or a couple days a week or something, we would have something online for them.
I just know that our committee has money to spend, and so this was one of the things we thought would be a great way to put it out there.
Yep.
So, Chris.
Hi.
You haven't had an elected position recently, have you?
I haven't, although I've thought about it, and I have someone in mind from Albright, one of our junior faculty members who just became tenured.
Oh.
The challenge, so Matt Sontag. Yeah, but
I think Matt told me some time ago that when he became tenured, he might become more active.
I was counting on you to remember that.
Yeah.
He's on sabbatical right now, but I will see him for lunch tomorrow. So in a physically distanced but socially engaged beer garden in West Reading that I highly recommend. And as for me, as my hair goes away because of Zoom, those are my organic crystals in the background. I am currently on the Chemists with Disabilities Committee at the national level, and also the Council of Undergraduate Research at the national level.
Okay.
So I'm not avoiding local section service. I'm avoiding burnout.
Right.
Meeting I forgot about.
Could you tell Matt Sontag that we're interested in finding a chair?
I will. I'll let him know that elections are coming up and have him be in touch, I guess, with George and Roger as soon as possible. Or Nigel, should he get directly in touch with you?
He can, yeah.
Okay.
He'd make a great candidate. You know, his solid, hardworking, responsible, very creative.
Oh yeah, no, he's terrific, and so yeah, I will mention that to him in person tomorrow, and apply the full court press, as it were.
Thank you.
Arm twisting?
Um, it's such a strong word, Jean, such a strong word.
Okay, the beer,
I'll get
twisting. How about that?
drunk and then get him to sign.
So actually, Chris, I don't know if we've actually met. I actually, since you said something and my ears perked up, this is completely off topic. I'm sorry. I have a group of students that have a sign language club on campus.
Wonderful.
And there is not a lot of sign language for chemistry.
Well, there's chromium. Wait, oh,
Yes.
sorry, chromium. There is a group that actually signs the periodic table.
Yeah.
Hydrogen, helium, lithium. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But tell me more.
So they're interested in trying to make pamphlets for science teachers to teach them basic words of sign language for, like, I love chemistry.
I love it.
And so we were going to actually try to talk to the committee to see what was out there and that. So
sure, I would be glad to connect you with the liaison. Deaf and hard of hearing is not my particular subspecialty, but I know the people who do, including those at the at both Gallaudet and Rochester. Do you know Todd Pagano? Okay, he's like a rock star up there, and has been on the committee, just cycled off fairly recently, but certainly I'd be happy to make introductions or maybe host some kind of Zoom event or something.
yeah, I think that would be a really interesting session for the Lehigh Valley.
Yeah, so, and actually if you flip back in Chemical and Engineering News, it was actually the American Chemical Society's thank you card to donors last year was the Chemists with Disabilities Committee in front of the new accessible periodic table.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all spelling out American Chemical Society in sign, well cramped in front of a giant periodic table, which for people my age, you shouldn't squat in front of anything. But anyway, yeah, let's do that. Let's be in touch. We've by the way, we've met momentarily at meetings here and there, typically at the awards ceremony poster session.
Yeah.
You're at Cedar Crest, is that right?
Yes.
You guys have hosted several times.
Yeah, I need to organize one again. I was going to do one on safety, but I think if this group is interested and if you have an opening in the spring, this might be kind of an interesting idea for a meeting.
For sure. And especially seeing work done. There's a community of blind and visually impaired in Lancaster that have been involved. But in the section there, I think that's Susquehanna.
Mm-hmm.
And
we
then
have a few contacts there, right, Lorena?
I'm sorry, I'm getting bitten. My pet is hungry and he's huge, so this is not trivial.
He's so
Saw
sweet.
him. He's beautiful.
Yeah.
Jean, drop me an email about what month you would like to do that, and I'll get you the schedule.
I'll talk to the club. It came about because we were wearing face masks, and I was just walking down the hallway, and I knew the sign language for smile was this, and so I was doing this because of the mask. And she's like, "You sign?" I'm like, "No, not really." She's like, "Well, I'm in the sign club," and so now they're interviewing faculty and then teaching them a phrase with the science, and then they're building a little podcast with it. And I was like, "This would be really fun."
No, it sounds great. It sounds great.
Sorry, I completely hijacked the meeting.
Oh.
It's the cat you have to answer to.
Yes.
Yeah. That looks like a mean cat.
He's a sweetie unless he's hungry. I think he's hungry now.
Oh, well, that'll do it. So George, you still alive there?
Yeah, I hear him.
So Gene and I will be at the Vinci Center on Saturday morning to kick off National Chemistry Week. Be outside, distanced, all that stuff.
Maybe we did lose him.
Oh, yes.
I mean, it's showing that he's talking and I'm hearing static, but
I think
I'm hearing the bottom of the box of
like
chocolate.
I tried rebooting it. Are you there? Can you hear me?
gotcha.
Yeah, my connection is not great. Hopefully you've been discussing great stuff while I was away.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So where did you get to after the elections? Or actually, we're on the volunteer of the year, and then I think that's where I cut out.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get anywhere else?
Yeah, we talked about a few things.
Excellent.
We thank you for your donation, George. It was very generous.
Yes. Surprised you didn't nominate me for chair-elect again.
Oh, we did.
We haven't told you what we do to past chairs yet.
It's you or the cat, George.
Well, now you know.
I don't know. The cat might put up a fight.
So a few quick things, if you didn't do them already. The Met grant, we're still going to pick an item if you didn't talk about that yet. We do have $1,400 to play with. And Caroline, Gregland, and I are going to try to pick something that is ideal for the section. You know, the item that we were looking for was unavailable when I looked it up after we were told of the award. So we're going to find something appropriate for the section to use. And we're going to figure out the best way to utilize it, being that we can't really get together as often as we used to. We'll try to find something that is applicable for the most use that we can get out of it. I've been contacted by ACS regarding, apparently they can't find payment for the Leadership Institute for 2018 when John went and 2019 when I went. So we're trying to find the record, see if John Fora has in fact paid that or not back when he was the treasurer, and if not, we'll take care of that. But we want to try to find the old records. You know, Tessia may have them in the scrapbook if she goes back to find it, but she wasn't a treasurer at the time, so that would require a little bit of research. But I've been emailed a few times from Tanya Fogg about that, so we're going to clear that up. And has Tessia commented on the treasurer's report in general yet?
Not yet.
No.
Yeah, you can say a few words about stuff.
Well, here, I can share my screen. Okay, so this is the general transaction ledger I've got going. The most recent transactions where we did the high school and foundations and organic scholarship award, which I got from Mike, and that was mailed out over the weekend. So the current value of our checking is $45,351. We have $28,000 in savings. And then, yeah, as George said, I'm trying to find, there's just 6 boxes of papers to sort through. And I did find the 2018 handwritten check register, but it stops in July of 2018 and just goes blank after that. So, and then on the thumb drive, none of the digital files really have anything particularly helpful for that. Even here's the budget for 2018, and I see there's some money here, but I'm not finding receipts for who went and what was paid.
Can you access it electronically from the bank? Go back.
Yeah, not that far back, no, because it wasn't in my name then. I can only see the records since I took ownership.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, maybe if I
It's the same
call up the
account.
bank and ask for 2018 records, maybe.
Yeah, they should be able to do that. It's the same account yet. You're just a different person handling it. So
Yeah, it's probably a special request. But first I wanted to find out who else went. So it was John and who else? Because we have
I
two
can't
delegates.
remember the
right?
ones I've been to.
Well, usually only one person goes. We sent you last time because you were new and you hadn't been there before, so we added you as a second person, but typically the chair-elect or an officer goes. So I think that 2020 was just an exception that we sent 2 people. So it's not necessarily, I was the only one who went last year, and Jonathan may have been the only one who went the year before as well.
Okay. So if we find we haven't paid it, I have the okay to just pay these?
I think so, yeah. If you know, if our records don't deny that we paid it, then I think it's probably for the best that we pay it, unless we can find some paperwork that says we haven't yet.
All right.
Jesse, would you mind sharing your current ledger with the EC?
And there are some things on there on the second screen of it that is some of the events we're simply not doing because they were tentative that we are not doing. So we can go through and help her fix the calendar for taking off the things that are simply budgeted, but we're not done this year.
So let's see, we did organic, we did high school. Is the travel scholarship happening? No, that's 0.
And then if they do a national meeting,
We did our senior chemistry awards. Did the poetry contest happen?
that's happening now
Yeah.
for National Chemistry Week.
Okay. Let's see, CEI grant.
That's probably leftover money from a grant George and I had. So we could apply that to,
Looks like 0.
Well, no, that's already spent. We
oh, it's already spent.
Hmm.
200 of that a few years ago, and the other 300 was done beginning of this year. So that's
Yeah, I
already
think so.
spent.
Okay. So science fair was canceled, right?
That was canceled this year, yeah.
The
Chemistry Olympiad
we did.
went ahead online.
Yeah.
Mhm. Did we donate for the summer camp? No, right? Canceled.
Don't know. They may
No.
not be doing any summer camps.
That's gee, I don't know what that is, honestly.
Okay. Ruth Kistler donation. That's 0
That was
for
for
this year.
Pam Kistler's mom. That was a one-time deal.
All right, we did the teachers award. I talked to John about that. We had 300 for the CEI grant.
That's the same. That's the same
Yeah.
item twice. It's already. That
So
was
that's
already
on there
spent.
twice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the IPG expense,
Is that,
that happened.
Yes, that happened.
That happened.
Right. Phantoms is canceled, right?
Yep.
Yes, there was no money spent.
Looks like we're having some extra money because we're not having in-person meetings for food. And we're not having any travel from the counselors this year, right?
Correct. They had a virtual national meeting.
All right, and that's everything.
And the Leadership Institute's going to be virtual also.
Oh, wow, that'll be different.
Oh yeah, we're just in planning stages right now. We're actually looking at doing a weekend as a kickoff and then trying to do something like once a month for a few months, and then at the fall national meeting having a social get-together.
Maybe not tell the incoming chair-elect that the Leadership Institute is canceled until after they agree to be on the ballot.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we have that new grant, is because all the money that would go to grants for sections to send officers, we got to spend that by the end of the fiscal year.
Or it disappears.
Yeah, so are there any proposals for what to do with some of this extra money?
I know we sold shirts. We got another $100 coming in.
Well, I think I think it's time that we kind of review this whole thing. And that's why I really was saying, Tessia, after this meeting, can you kind of distribute where you think we're at to all the EC members? I think we need to really sit down and look at this first, rather than just sort of peering at it on the screen. I find that very difficult.
Okay, so
Yeah,
I can email this.
I think we should have an executive committee meeting to do this, Ben, rather than just do this now.
And a lot of people aren't on this call, so.
All right.
All right. I fear we've lost George again. I think we need to spend some money on getting George a decent connection. I don't know how we're going to do that, but somehow.
One of those technology grants.
That's right. Well, I think the deadline is midnight tonight, isn't it?
Or just a personal collection to get them a, the problem is that it's not just the phone, it's the service you pay for.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I don't know if any other business, since George isn't here. Is there anything we haven't covered that we need to cover?
Not that I can think of.
I don't have anything else.
I just have a couple info things. They are starting production to film for the Chem Luminaries, and they're going to do some kind of a live web event in the beginning of December. Since I know we had nominated ourselves for some Chem Luminaries, just be on the lookout for that. No, I don't have any clue. I'm not on awards. Also, as you know, Forms is going bye-bye. The new reporting system, which actually I'm really excited about, I haven't seen it, but I'm hearing really great things about it, is going to be called Community Connections. And it's going to be a platform for both local sections, and then they're eventually going to bring in the student chapter reporting into this, and also technical sessions will be using this, but it's going to be a lot more. It's going to allow us to promote events to other sections. It's going to have like a calendar event coordinator in it and stuff. November will be the last time where we can load things into the old forms, and then they're going to start the migration. So anything we have in Forms before November 1st should migrate over.
Should.
It's the end of an era.
It is.
If something drew us all together, it was how we loathed Forms.
And we did a really good job compared to some.
Is it worth doing anything in Forms? Gee, just wait for the new one.
Yeah, I know. I'm just in case we did have anything in there.
Yeah, I don't know if we do.
I know that they're planning on pulling 5 years of financials, and I think they're going to try to go for 3 years of like Chem Luminaries, and I'm hoping local sections, so that we can still go back to past years and reference things. But I don't know a lot about it. I just know some of the dates and some of the really cool things that they are kind of going to highlight. And that should be coming out soon as a mass email.
This is making me feel old, because I remember when Forms was first being written, I was on a small advisory group that spent a couple of days at the ACS headquarters in Washington, talking to the Indian programmers who were up in the middle of the night, meeting with us, trying to work out the details on what was going to be in Forms.
Yeah. Just to give you some updates on things I'm hearing about from committee.
Good. Okay, well, don't know if George is going to be able to rejoin us, so.
Can I move to adjourn?
Second.
Good night, everybody.
All right.
Night.
Thanks
And
for
thank
coming.
you, Albright, for hosting us, if anyone is still on from Albright.
Oh, he's not, but
Okay.
I know.
Okay.
All right. It was great seeing you all.
all right. Very good
See
talking.
you guys.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thank you.